Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds here, back again, kicking off our divisional breakdowns.
Yeah, we're starting it with the AFC East.
And we have to cover the Patriots.
No.
Oh, that's ugly. Talk about myself.
Ready, set, hut. Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Rich Dotson. Here are my fellow nerds, Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
And Garrett Price.
How's it going?
It's going well. For some of us, it's not going so well if you're a Cam Akers owner because, well, he's not going to play in the 2021 season. As camps opened up today for a couple teams for the rookies, the carnage has already begun. Cam Akers lost for the year with a torn Achilles, which is not a good injury if you're a running back.
Not so great.
No, it's brutal. And I know we're not the biggest Cam Akers fans in here necessarily.
ADP values. Let's
Right.
make it right. And then didn't dislike Cam Akers himself. Didn't like his ADP value.
But anytime you see a young star with his future ahead of him go down with a devastating injury like this, like it just sucks. It just sucks for the player, sucks for the fan base, it sucks for fantasy football managers.
It's like me asking Curly Sue to the prom. Heartbroken. Not going anywhere. Not going anywhere good. So if you're Cam Akers owner,
I don't even have anything to say there.
Yeah, neither did I at the time. Just cry. Just tears. No words needed.
Yeah.
Thanks, Curly Sue.
So
I don't
sad.
think I've ever met a Curly Sue, but
No,
she
but-
sounds like she's pretty nice. I'd probably want to take her to prom.
I don't know that I've met anyone named Curly, period. Let alone with
I wasn't allowed to go to prom. Principal didn't like me. I think I've told this story in the podcast before.
I've heard it several times, regardless of whether or not you did or not. So I couldn't be a judge.
I
Yeah.
vaguely remember it, but I think it's been a while.
Yeah, something around St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, principal told me I couldn't go to prom. He hated me. Pretty much said that too. He's like, I hate you, Dotson. You can't go to prom. That's when he punched me in the stomach before a graduation ceremony, and he grabbed me by the arm and said, Dotson, I swear if you do anything stupid on that stage, you will not get your diploma. So, of course, I did to Billy Madison. I'm the smartest man alive. And guess who was right? Because I still got my high school diploma.
Yep.
So, showed that. I don't even remember his name, but showed that guy.
I don't remember that guy's name either.
No idea. He didn't like me. I remember that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't let me go to prom. Threatened not to give me my
Punch you in
diploma.
the stomach.
Punched me in the stomach. Yeah. I think he thought I could get away with it because I technically was like no longer going to that school, but I wasn't going to tell anybody. I didn't care. Didn't hurt me. Tough.
That was a steal.
I was tough when I was 18.
It was tough. I was 18.
was a long
I was
time ago.
unbreakable back then.
Now leave me alone. So Cam Akers, he's probably tough too. He probably will overcome. Best case scenario, you got Emmanuel Sanders. He came back. He was a little shifty out there.
He's the shining example of what it could be, because there are other players that have come back from Achilles injuries, but not at one of those types of wide receiver, running back type of
I
position.
think of the last running back. Is it Foreman?
Donta Foreman
Foreman.
was the best one, and he
Best one. Where'd he come back from? Arby's?
exactly. That's the tough part. Like,
He played in
literally,
the NFL
he
again.
played again.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that he did. Yeah.
That's the issue, is most of the guys are either out of the league completely or just play like a handful of games at like no effectiveness at all. So the fact that he even came back and was on a team and got carries and did anything with them is the shining example at this point.
And that was like 5 years ago. Medicine's come a long way. Cleveland Browns Grant Delpit tore his ACL early. He seems like he's back 100% already.
His
The good
Achilles.
news
His Achilles. You said
is
ACL.
it begins with an A. It's all the
Well, I want the people here
Trojan
listening
days.
to have the correct information.
remember Brad Pitt. Oh, look at this
Ooh,
holding
hey,
hands now.
yeah,
That's how excited I am about this.
Exciting moment here.
So they happen early is really well. I moved
Putting my
Cam
hands
Akers down significantly in my dynasty rankings, closer to running back number 30 overall. We're going to get more into this because we're doing, obviously today's show, we're doing AFC East. It's not obvious, but it's obvious now. We're in your face.
Now that you said it.
Yeah, AFC East. Nerd Herd Show, we're going to do NFC
East. Yep.
Next week, we're doing AFC West, NFC
West.
side. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about, obviously, the Rams next week, a little bit more details. But if you're on the waiver wire now, the running back you want to pick up is probably going to be, if they don't sign a Le'Veon Bell, a Dante Foreman,
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley, which I don't think they're going to sign Todd Gurley because
They're kind of bitter there.
Did somebody just slip in a Dante Foreman?
yeah, it's me, Mr. Achilles himself. They're going to
I'll show you how it's done.
they're going to give Cam Akers some motivation. We're like, hey, we're gonna bring in this big Dante Foreman guy, and they're like, oh, why is that? I'm like, motivate you
He
guys.
came back.
Anything is possible.
The guy you want to pick up is Xavier Jones.
Absolutely.
Out of SMU. Had some really good tape. Was somebody we were excited about when he came out. We liked his college tape. Ended up not really. Actually, he looked okay when he got a couple carries.
He did. It was interesting that he was actually on the active roster last year because he was an undrafted free agent, but they had Cam Akers, they had Henderson, they had Malcolm Brown, but yet they still carried him for most of the season on the active roster. So the fact that he even made the team, first of all, then did that shows that there could be something there. And now he's a backup role to a guy that, even though Henderson, I do think will get the lion's share of the carries, he's not necessarily established as their lead back or anything like that.
I don't think he has the makings of a bell cow either, to be honest. I mean, I think he's a speed guy. I think he's a very straight line-ish speed guy. I think they need somebody else to take some. And carries.
Jones is very shifty.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that probably Henderson's a guy that is probably maxed out at 15 carries in my opinion, and week to week. There's probably going to be 10 or 15 other carries that need to kind of go to the backup guys. And Xavier Jones might be a guy that starts off getting 7 or 8 of those and we could see that kind of
rewarded
grow.
if he does well.
Yeah, grow as the season goes on.
He finished out as, for our nerd score, I think he ended up being I think he was 10 in our running back rankings right behind like DJ Dallas, Zach Moss, some of those kind of guys. So he had a very good tape score for us.
So I don't want to get into too much because, again, we have a long show ahead of us today covering these divisions. These are always our longest shows. So if you're listening, it's probably going to be a good hour and a half easily. And we have some ads on this show, too. So it's going to push it back a little bit. So we'll get into a little bit more in depth. Right now, Daryl Henderson. If I have Daryl Henderson, I'm saying this, I would sell Daryl Henderson unless I'm a contender.
Right.
That I'm keeping him and I need him. But if not, I'm sure you can get a 23 first for Daryl Henderson right now, maybe even 23 first plus. I'm making that move. I'm selling him. Dynasty's all about buying windows. This is a really good window to sell Daryl Henderson. And I am buying Xavier Jones. If not, picking him off your waiver wire.
Jake Funk is a 7th-round rookie this past year. There were rumors that somebody was calling him like the dumbed-down version of CMC, which is just ridiculous. Like on the coaching staff or something. It was
everyone always gets compared to Tyreek Hill, CMC.
Right. A poor man's. So Jake Funk, he's a very fast player, and that's kind of what he did.
He is talented. I remember watching some of his tape. It was kind of one of the last guys I threw on. His biggest issue was he just was never healthy.
I think he ran like a 4.24 is what is in my
4.24. You mean 4.42?
No. 4.24. That's why Jake Funk's name like stuck in the back of my head. Yeah, I was like, I mean, these are all pro day numbers, right? So it wasn't like an official NFL comment. But that's what if I saweth with my eyeseth.
All right, guys. Well, yeah, Xavier Jones, Funky Town, and Daryl Henderson.
There we go.
Sell, buy, waiver wire.
Yep, stash maybe.
Stash them up, yeah.
Get funky.
So let's get into the show. AFC East. But before we do, we got to tell you about one of our friends we have not talked about in a couple of weeks here, and that's DynastyDepot.com. Now, as the season approaches, we're running out of time for you to get DynastyDepot.com. And you're like, Rich, why do I go to DynastyDepot.com? Because this is an opportunity to make some money. This opportunity to play for $500,000 as well in the FFPC Championship, because DynastyDepot.com is all about FFPC leagues. Leagues that never have seen a Dynasty League fold in its existence. And DynastyDepot.com right now is a website you can go to and buy and sell FFPC teams like you're on eBay. It's like a stock market. It gives you a chance to actually go in today as these drafts are starting to pick up again, as we see late July, August, where some Dynasty drafts start to pick up. You get into FFPC, draft a team, and never, ever play that team and sell it on DynastyDepot.com right now for a profit. You could buy $1,000 teams for steep discounts and turn them around, either win that league or sell them for profit. The big thing here is if you're really good at drafting and you're really good at just forming really good Dynasty teams, DynastyDepot.com is going to let you make some really good profits. If you build a good team, you go into year one and you win that league and you win the prize, you can then double dip and resell that team right away for a profit, and you automatically come up 4 times your entry fee. That's what Dynasty Depot can do for you. And right now, you can get their whole yearly package and see what teams you want to get for only $14.99 a year, and that's using that promo code NERDS. Use that promo code NERDS right now, and you can win a ton of prizes, buy some really good teams, and again, start drafting some good teams for profit. And right now, the Dynasty Nerds mock draft in any app store right now on your phone, you can get that for free with the most accurate Dynasty mock draft tool on the market today to help you prepare for this as well, or any other startups you're going to do. DynastyDepot.com. Use that promo code NERDS and make some money.
Little quick note on Jake Funk. It was a 4.43. So I don't know who I was thinking of.
Okay,
with the
I was going to
4.24.
say, like, he definitely looked fast, but I wasn't prepared for Chris Johnson.
Yeah, I thought I would have heard of that too.
Gosh, me and my bad information.
Misinformation.
Only if we edit these shows, we'd just edit that nonsense right out of here.
But lucky you get to hear it.
Unbelievable. Cut that out. Jeez.
Cut it
All right,
out.
let's get into the first team on top of the list is the AFC East. Would be who?
Buffalo Bills.
Alphabetically, it would be the Buffalo Bills.
Oh.
Talent-wise, it'd be the Buffalo Bills.
True
Okay.
statement.
Dynasty asset-wise, Buffalo Bills. Now, the Buffalo Bills depth chart, courtesy of ourlads.com. So, of course, we want to thank ourlads.com for providing us these very good depth charts. But again, just temporary because the season hasn't started yet. Yeah. But Buffalo Bills quarterback depth chart looking like this. Josh Allen at quarterback, Mitch Trubisky behind him, and Jake Fromm.
Quarterback controversy.
I almost lost my breath there. A little overclumped. Running back, we got Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, Matt Breida, who they just paid $1.1 million to, and Tywan Jones at wide receiver. Stephon Diggs, one of the best dynasty assets out there today.
Yeah, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel Davis, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, who they also just signed and paid him $6 million. Isaiah Hodgins, Jake Kumaro, Duke Williams. At tight end, real skimpy. I mean, if we were going swimming, this would be it'd be hot being this skimpy, but we're not. Dawson Knax,
Football. Yep.
Tommy Sweeney, Jacob Hollister.
Sweeney Todd.
No, Tommy Sweeney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, close though. Yeah, give it up there, Giant Up. So let's just start right there at tight end. Super thin. I still think there's a very good chance they end up with Zach Ertz. I think it's them or Indianapolis. But if not, they're giving Dawson Knax, the former third-round pick, a lot of time here because they didn't do anything. Tommy Sweeney, Jacob Hollister, serviceable NFL tight ends, but not dynasty tight ends. And obviously Dawson Knax has got to come in here. He's got to produce because he just can't catch the football. And we talked about him on one of our sneaky kind of buy low episodes. And right now, his best game came in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. He had 6 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown. And he actually scored a touchdown in both playoff games. But right now, his hands have been a complete disaster. What do you think about Dawson Knax? Do you think he's just a tight end too? Which is, if you're a mid-range tight end too, you might as well be a ghost.
I mean, I think he has upside. Obviously, we've mentioned it on the podcast before that he was late to the game as far as making the switch to tight end. Was it quarterback that he played?
Yep.
Before that, yeah. So, I mean, I think he has some untapped potential, and he did go out in the offseason and work with a hand-eye coordination specialist in order to kind of clean up some of those hands issues. I mean, I think this is one of those, this is his third year, and it's make or break for him. And they don't have a lot behind him. I think Jacob Hollister is the next closest thing to a fantasy producer from the tight end position. And I think if he falters, they'll bring him in because I think Hollister, he has a rapport going back to college with Josh Allen, and he can catch passes. That's what he's good at. That's what he does. So he's not necessarily the best blocker, but he's a guy that can go out there and catch passes.
Which all that matters for fantasy football.
Yeah, so this is the make or break, I think, for Dawson Knax here with the Bills.
What could help Dawson Knax would actually probably hurt the team overall, but there's a lot of questions about what could potentially happen with Cole Beasley. He said that he could just walk away right now and be fine. There's a lot of controversy around him.
And that's to go in a little deeper, that's all, it centers all around the protocols that for COVID. He does not want to get the vaccine, and he's basically, I'm going to retire if they put up sanctions against players that do have COVID or that won't get the COVID vaccine.
Exactly. And so if that does happen, that doesn't help necessarily the team and the wide receiver core, but it would potentially give a slight boost to Dawson Knax value for fantasy football, because Stephon Diggs is going to get Stephon Diggs no matter what. But
Sure.
Gabe Davis and Emmanuel Sanders are probably going to be doing some more big things down the field. A lot of the underneath stuff was typically Cole Beasley. And so Dawson Knox could maybe steal some of those targets. I think that's best case scenario for him. But we're still looking at a guy that's a dart throw.
Yeah, and Cole Beasley, if he does not, if something happens with him here, it is a big loss for some people because Cole Beasley last year was a championship caliber player, which
82
is
receptions.
Yeah, I mean a wide receiver too, essentially, which is a championship caliber player. These are the perfect kind of players that you would want to target when you're making championship a run. Players that you can get, they're going to give you wide receiver 2 numbers for a steep discount. Cole Beasley could have been had for a third going into last season, and he would have helped you win a fantasy football championship. And right now, we don't know where it's going to go because if he does not make the team, 48% of the targets last year went to either Stephon Diggs or Cole Beasley. That's where Josh Allen was going. And Josh Allen, somebody who on first down, he would throw the football a ton. I mean, this is somebody who would come out and just get rid of the football right away. They threw a ton on first down, and they were the recipients. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, a wide receiver 1. Cole Beasley, a wide receiver 2. And then, like you mentioned, they signed Emmanuel Sanders, stretch the field. Gabe Davis, the big second-year wide receiver. He can see an uptick there. But maybe Emmanuel Sanders can slide in that Cole Beasley role. Maybe he could end up being a sneaky wide receiver 3.
He could be.
Low-end wide receiver 2. I would lean towards wide receiver 3 at his age.
I was going to say,
that's where the value might be.
Traditionally, I think Emmanuel Sanders worked down the field a little bit more. But now that he's getting older, he's coming off an Achilles, he might be able to slide right into a role where he's working the underneath. He's getting open on these short routes, similar to a Cole Beasley if they do end up trying to move on from him. And there's rumors from one of the beat writers, I believe, said they could move on from him just so he's not a distraction. So it might not even be that he retires. They might just cut him if he threatens to retire.
Sure.
And the money lines up, they would save $4 million against the cap if they did decide to move on from Cole Beasley. So it's not something that's out of the realm of possibilities from a financial standpoint. So I guess we'll see how that one shakes out. I certainly think they have enough talent at the wide receiver position that if they decided to, they could. I don't think it would be a great move because I think Cole Beasley and Josh Allen have a good rapport.
They do.
So I don't think that'd be the smartest move from that standpoint. But if they just want to eliminate a distraction and kind of, I don't know if he's become a cancer in the locker room or distraction in the locker room, saying guys don't get vaccines and they really want guys to get vaccines. Well, I mean, who the heck knows? So if they do end up moving on from Cole Beasley, it's probably for a bunch of reasons that don't have to do with football.
It's an interesting situation to monitor because this is a team that produced 2 high-end wide receivers, and look for them to do the same this year. Everything's still in place. You still got Brian Dable there, who will be a head coach most likely in 2022. Like I mentioned, no team threw the ball more, even on first down, than the Buffalo Bills. Literally no team. They threw on first down 62% of the time. This is a team like to throw the ball because Josh Allen took a massive step forward into this season. And we're talking about a guy in his first couple seasons, he was only completing 56% of his passes.
It's Dayball and Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey, they paid and kept around. That's his quarterback coach, and they're kind of grooming him, I think, to be the eventual offensive coordinator.
Super smart quarterback, had high success there for Miami. Yeah. And Josh Allen, after the first couple of years, completing 56% of his passes, only threw for 5,163 yards, 30 touchdowns in his first couple of years. Comes out last year and completes 69.2% of his passes. He threw for 4,544 yards and 37 touchdowns. I have never in my life seen a quarterback of somebody coming out that I was really worried about as a prospect. His arm was always one of the most beautiful things, but his accuracy was somewhat of an issue. Come out and put it together like he did. To take this massive leap forward, not only with his yards, with his touchdowns, but with his accuracy, almost at 70%. And he's basically everything you would have hoped Cam Newton could be. This big, strong, powerful guy who can rush for first downs. He could rush for touchdowns. But all of a sudden now he's being really accurate with the football with a cannon for an arm. I mean, there's a reason for me. I don't know where you guys stand about Josh Allen, but Josh Allen for me is my quarterback number 2 overall in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I cannot pass up his rushing ability because some of those rushing quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, they don't have the frame to sustain that. As long as Cam Newton did, for example, where Cam Newton's a top 6 quarterback for 6-7 years there, Josh Allen can maintain that. But what he also brings now is showing that he could be potentially later down that Big Ben, big body pocket passer too when needed. So he offers all spectrums of that dynasty fantasy football quarterback. If I was in a super flex league, I would take Josh Allen number 2 overall.
He's number 2 on my list as well.
I think I have him at 3, but that's splitting hairs basically.
And it's for all those same reasons you just said. I mean, he came into the league and we knew that he had a huge arm and we knew he was going to add some rushing total. We didn't know how much, and then he kind of came on and that was his thing. That was how he was scoring points. But then he comes out and makes this huge leap from a passing standpoint and an accuracy standpoint. And like you said, like you'd mentioned, he's got the frame. He has a frame that will hold up. He is 250 pounds, you know what I mean? And he's 6'4". He can take a beating and keep on going. I think as he continues to evolve, if he does want to have this, almost 20-year career, he's going to probably have to run a little bit less and throw a little bit more. But his trajectory as far as the learning curve and how much he's improving in his passing, I think he can do that and still maintain a pretty high ceiling from a fantasy perspective.
And I think we can't overlook how much Stephon Diggs really helped him last year too, going from the receivers that he had before to a legitimate bona fide wide receiver 1. Just adds so much more confidence for you as a passer, a guy that you're willing to take a chance on at times where, you might have held back before, or the DB might have made a play because the receiver's not going up and getting the ball the same way. So I think Stephon Diggs changed the mentality a lot for Josh Allen as well. And those two get to be, Stephon Diggs is in his prime. Those two are going to get to be together for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons. And I think we're going to see a lot of good fantasy football magic with that combo.
He's in all this without a strong running game, which I expect to take a step forward this year. And he brings so much to the game. His legs and his power bring so much to the game. He's the only quarterback to ever rush for 7 touchdowns or more in his first 3 seasons in the league. Only quarterback to ever do that. Wow. He pounds it when it gets to the end zone. Like, again, he's kind of like what we hate about like Cam Newton. It's like, okay, you get inside the 5, you have the running back in Carolina, like Cam's going to run it in. Oh, there's D'Angelo Williams. Cam's going to run it in though. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Josh Allen. He's going to hurt the running back there because when you're inside the 5, there's a high chance he's going to take it in there for the touchdown.
And at this point, none of the running backs have really established themselves as true bell cow, good running backs in the league. It'll be interesting to see the split between Singletary and Moss this year, and even maybe a little bit of Matt Breida sprinkled in there here and there because he's got the speed that the other two don't have. But it's going to be really tough to trust any one of those 3 guys on a consistent basis this year. I would assume that Zach Moss is going to be the most consistent, but even there, you would be thrilled if he ended up being running back 24.
I would be. I mean, as a person that has Zach Moss and got him, last year in the, I think, late second, I would be super happy if Zach Moss ended up anywhere in sniffing running back 2 numbers, personally.
Yeah. What sucks is that situation is it's going to be probably a 3-headed monster. Mm-hmm. Last year, when you're looking at touches, Devin Singletary out-touched Zach Moss 142 to 126. Now, Zach Moss did get the goal line area. So, like, the most important part is, like, who's going to get – if I'm going to take a running back, who's going to be the running back in the goal line for that potential? It was Zach Moss. And I like Zach Moss as a prospect. Really good contact balance, really good at making players miss. I think Zach Moss has a good chance to take a big step forward here because even though their offensive line was, like, okay last year, their running backs got hit on over 40% of their carries. They were dead last in the league. The Buffalo Bills running backs were dead last when it came to getting contact behind the line of scrimmage last year. So their running backs there weren't
because they're so slow.
They weren't getting a really fair shake, and they're not explosive off the line there.
That is one thing for sure.
So, they also is a team that were just not giving their running backs a lot of opportunity too. They were really took a big step forward in a passing game. This is a team that just averaged 21, slightly over 21 touches per game, which was in the bottom 3 of the NFL last year. So with those amount of touches right now, those running backs just didn't have the opportunity to come in and score like they wanted to. Now, Brian Daboll is a very innovative offensive coordinator. He did a really good job at like switching things up throughout the season.
Sure.
And going into the season, he might want to switch this now so you can't get a dead beat on these guys. And maybe they will get Zach Moss a little bit more involved. So going back to the running back, I am worried about a three-headed monster. But and I wouldn't call them a monster.
I wouldn't either.
A three-headed puppy, right? Like, it's cute. Like, you want to pet it, but, I don't know if you want to take it home. If I did have to take one, if I did have to take one of these guys, hey, we got to cut this puppies. We can only save one. Who are you saving, right? We got to get rid of two of these heads. I'm sorry. I know nobody. Tough decisions when you got puppies, right?
For me, it's Zach Moss. Breed is not
Moss.
even. He's not even guaranteed to be on this roster. The money says so. I mean, he's getting paid like the league minimum basically, and there's
1.1 million. Yeah, he's not.
Yeah, it's
so it's Devin Singletary or Zach Moss. Devin Singletary out-touched last year.
But Zach Moss also missed 3 games, so that
True.
plays into that. I would probably take Zach Moss barely. It is tempting in full point PPR leagues because I do think Devin Singletary will be the more active pass catching back. But at the end of the day, I just feel a little bit better about the overall volume that I believe Zach Moss will have.
Because they can produce there. Josh Allen helps. I mean, even though they were dead last in touches and they're really bad at getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage, as a group, they did average 5 yards per carry. I mean, they're top 13 when it came to actually yards per carry per game.
Once they get rolling, man. Once they get rolling.
I think there's a strong likelihood, though, that the leading rusher in 2022 is probably not on this team.
Most likely,
unless Zach Moss establishes himself.
Yeah, I think he would have to take a big step forward because
I think he's the only one that could.
You look at that offense, especially if they end up getting a guy like Zach Ertz. That's the only hole. Then their line's pretty solid overall. Good receiver, good quarterback. Like it's really just, can we get a running back so we don't have to have Josh Allen plunging in at the goal line?
It's the best gamble you can make. Now, it all depends where you're getting your information from. Like, what's the value on Zach Moss? Like, if you're a big fan of Michelle and Kate, the Ball Blast, our friends, the Ball Blast girls at Ball Blast, the Ball Blast podcast is another great podcast as well that does Dynasty and
they do a
is
great job.
full. If you are a big fan of them, then Zach Moss is like
end all be all.
End all be all. You know what I mean? Like they think he's the second coming of I don't know. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they love Zach Moss. So the price is going to be more valuable there.
Thurman Thomas.
Another Buffalo Bills running back.
You know, Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders were on the same roster.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Isn't that insane?
Yep.
That's insane. I mean, you have Thurman Thomas. Thurman Thomas goes to Bills, and then Barry Sanders comes out and has literally the greatest college football year in the history of college football. My favorite running back of all time, Barry Sanders. The best.
He's amazing. Yeah.
So what would you pay? If you had to buy Zach Moss, right? Like I came to you, I'm like, dude, you got to buy Zach Moss. What's the most you're paying for Zach Moss?
You don't have a choice.
You have to, sir.
You have to. I'm like Liam Neeson, and I'm like, listen,
I've got a very
I don't know where you are,
set of skills.
but if you don't have Zach Moss by the time I find you, I'm going to take these skills, and I'm going to pay the bills.
Wow.
Oh, look at me. I'm an amateur rap artist all of a sudden.
Look at you.
Look at me. Hip Hop Anonymous.
If you put that kind of amazing.
What would you pay? Would you pay, if you're a contender, you're a little thin at running back, you had Cam Akers, now you don't. Abracadabra. Orlando.
The most I would pay was a second. I wouldn't pay any more.
No?
No.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like a late second?
That would be it. That's all I could do.
I would have to be confident that I was giving my pick and I'm a true contender.
Okay.
Because I'm not giving anything in the top 15 or so.
I'm the same way. I'd pay anywhere from pick 2.8 to 2.12. I have no problem paying for Zach Moss and go for that upside because all running backs are in a hashtag 2 to 3 year window. All of them. We did a show, if you want to look it up, last year on odds of being a running back one more than once. We don't have the statistics right in front of us, but it was like what, 17%?
It was something real ridiculous. It maybe it touched 20, but it was not much.
And then odds to be a running back one more than 2 years, it dropped all the way down to like 6%.
Yeah,
it just got worse and worse. So the odds of you being a running back for 3 years is literally, out of all the running backs, slim to none. Like literally slim to none. That's why we always use that in the Dynasty Nerds show and website, hashtag 2 to 3 year window. It has to refer to the running backs because no matter what you think of these players, that's what you're going to get.
Yep.
A guy as good as Saquon Barkley, he's only had one running back one season, essentially, like where he was just dynamite.
Right.
So the guys are hard to come by as it is. Let them come. Let them go. Shall we move on?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
The Miami Dolphins, located, guess where?
South Beach.
Yes.
Florida?
Yes. Miami, Georgia. Quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa, Jacoby Brissett. No more Ryan Fitzpatrick to come here and look all awesome. He's on Washington now. We're going to talk about him next show. Locked in is the guy. Running back, Myles Gaskin, Malcolm Brown, Jared Dokes, Patrick Laird. Patrick Laird, one guy got his tattoo, just not very good. I mean,
why do they have Savon Ahmed all the way down at like the last possible running back?
I don't know, because I would take Salvin Ahmed over Patrick
He got
Laird.
carries at the end of last year.
When Gaskin went down, he played well. That's interesting.
I thought he was a good prospect.
Yeah, he's definitely in the mix.
What about Laird too? Like if Laird's on the field, guess what? They're passing the ball, like all the time. And wide receiver, they got Devontae Parker, they got Jalen Waddle, the 6th overall pick, Will Fuller, who they just signed, Mr. PED himself, Preston Williams, a guy who we used to like.
He'll be missing the first game.
He will be missing. Why?
As the result
He's a ped dispenser.
of a Peds.
Lynn Bowden Jr., who was like a high draft pick, and then the Raiders were like, dude, you got to go.
You're not
In
a running
training
back.
camp. I'll see you later.
Jakeem Grant, who got a good contract at one point, and we're like, why is this guy getting paid? And sure enough, Dolphins are probably wondering the same thing. Alan Hearns, you might remember.
They're finally able to get out from underneath him. They can finally cut Jakeem Grant, by the way, without
He's gone.
Yeah.
He's gone. Alan Hearns, who opted out last year, he might be out. And then Robert Foster, former Bills.
They could save a
three-gamer.
little bit on the cap if they cut Alan Hearns.
At tight end, Mike Gesicki, Hunter Long, who they drafted in the 3rd round, and Chris Myrick. So let's start at the top here. Let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa. One thing I noticed last year about Tua Tagovailoa, there was like 2 Tuas, right? One where Tua was in 11 personnel, and Tua looked absolutely disastrous. Then there's other Tua who was in 12 personnel, and Tua looked pretty good. I mean, he had a pretty solid record there. I mean, he averaged 6.3 yards per attempt, which was not good. He was 37th in the league. Completed 64% of his passes for 1,814 yards, had 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He had 9 starts, so we're going back and forth, but he was 6-3 in those starts. What do you guys think about Tua? Like, is he a product of Alabama, where he was just surrounded by an absorbent amount of talent? Or is he a really good, small, left-handed prospect for Miami that's going to take them to where they need to go? A team that was on the cusp of the playoffs last year with 10 wins.
Yes.
Great analysis, Garrett.
I think he's a little bit of both. You know what I mean? That's why I said yes.
Yeah.
I think he's good enough for what they need. I think last year was a tough way to enter the league, especially injured with the serious hip injury that he had, and really getting nothing in the offseason at all. Going as far as training, as far as practices, any of that kind of stuff. I think he was very limited in all that activity. So this, and you could see it on the field in his body. He looked like he wasn't able to work out. He looked skinny. He looked small. And I think we're going to see a different guy this year that's able to, go throughout a whole professional offseason of workouts. And there has to be a little bit of fear in anyone's mind when you have a very serious injury like he did, and then you come back and you're playing at a higher level than you did when you had that injury. So hopefully he got all that behind him now, and he's just able to kind of move forward, because I think he's a very effective, very accurate passer, and that's what I saw at Alabama. And he's never going to be a guy that's throwing it way downfield. I don't think that's part of his game. I do think he operates, or he will operate in a traditional, like almost West Coast, very close to the line of scrimmage type of offense. I think that's the best fit for him. We'll see how they end up using him, but I think, getting a guy like Jalen Waddle helps. I don't know that a guy like Will Fuller, who, traditionally has been a downfield guy, I don't see that as a great fit for him, but.
Well, they just didn't have that as a team. And because like you mentioned, I mean, Tua Tagovailoa last year, he might as well have been on pressure luck, because he had double whammies everywhere. I mean, it was not going good for him. And what they didn't have look at his target, look at his weapons last year.
I think
Lynn Bowden Jr., Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki. I think Devontae Parker is a fine NFL receiver. I think Mike Gesicki is a great tight end, but he didn't have anything going around for him.
And for I shouldn't say most, but a lot of the games towards the end of the season, which is where we saw him struggle the most, was those last few games there. Parker was out. Gesicki was hurt. Like, all of the Preston Williams was gone. Like, literally his top receivers were like Malcolm Perry and Lynn Bowden Jr. Like those were his top receivers. Like how do you expect a guy to perform with nobody to throw? Like we saw with Baker Mayfield last year, all of his receivers were out one game. He didn't play very well. It's tough when you don't have a rapport, you don't have a rhythm. All of your best assets are not there. But the 2 games before that, dreadful last 2 or 3 games there, he went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. He beat, they're not that great, but he beat Cincinnati, had a very good game. Like, he had put together some very good games before that. Just all the wheels kind of fell off there at the end of the season, and they put him in, and then they took him out. And then they put him back in again. And, like, it's just so hard to win that way. It's so hard to get a rhythm that way. Just, there were so many things that went wrong. For him to still have had as solid of a year as he did with the overall numbers are surprising as it is.
Yeah, a hard spot to be in. Coming off the hip injury, coming into a COVID year, no offseason. Then you find yourself on a team that's competing to make the playoffs. So any kind of little mistake you make, the team has no patience. They got to get Ryan Fitzpatrick in who could come out there and win because they're trying to win.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited to see where it could get where Tua could go from this year because
he's a good buy low for me.
We mentioned like what Will Fuller could do, what Jalen Waddle could do. They had nobody on that team that could open up the defense, right? They had nobody can get past that line of scrimmage and take the top off it at all. And now they have that. And they're bringing a guy like Jalen Waddle Jalen Waddle comes in, and he's somebody who operated out of the slot most of the time at Alabama. He's somebody that lined up in the slot at 68% of the time while he played at Alabama. And to go back to Tua, when Tua was at Alabama, he actually preferred to target the slot. He targeted the slot wide receiver 40% of his snaps. It wasn't until last year where they got completely away from it at the NFL level. So this is somebody who's going to help him a ton as well. And Jalen Waddle, obviously, an elite weapon. I think he could do a lot. It kind of shows a lot by taking him at 6 where they want to go with Tua there as well. And Gesicki, because Gesicki is somebody who's an extremely athletic tight end.
Yep.
Very talented, finished as a top 6 tight end last year. One of the top spark score tight ends coming out. Going into year 3, which is usually the big breakout year for tight ends as well. So, or was last year?
No, last year was 3. This is last year of his rookie deal.
Which was his breakout year. I'm sorry. Going into year 4 with more weapons around him. You mentioned they bring in Will Fuller. I'm not a fan of Will Fuller whatsoever. I know the Deshaun Watson stats with and without Fuller are there. But again, I think Will Fuller helps an NFL team more than your NFL fantasy team because the best ability is availability. And what Will Fuller does not give you as a 27-year-old who had to take PEDs to finally stay healthy is he can't stay healthy. This is a guy who's never played a full season and approximately 55% of all total games possible. So he's literally there half the time you need him.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't have players like that on my Dynasty roster, because when I need them, they're not there. Or they're going to get hurt at some point in the game, and they're going to cost me a W. And I can't feel comfortable with a player of Will Fuller's stature of, 1, he's out there taking the peds. 2, he can't stay healthy. And he's a big play receiver. Now they have Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker, and Gesicki out there. He's an asset for me that I've been saying for every single year. Anytime Will Fuller comes out and has a couple of good games on this podcast, we've said 100 times. Sell.
Yep. Don't forget about Preston Williams, too. I mean,
I like Preston. He's very talented.
He's coming off an injury as well, so we'll see how he comes back. And he could end up being Devontae Parker and Preston Williams on the outside, Jalen Waddle in the slot, and Will Fuller.
I think they paid Will Fuller too much money to even let that happen.
$10 million bucks. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, Preston Williams. What was he undrafted? Right?
He was
undrafted. Really high upside. Preston Williams is the kind of guy when he finally leaves Miami, does he make the team this year? He goes somewhere else. I'm a little bit more excited. He can get some out. But he falls in the category now. He's Rashard Higgins. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Somebody who's a talented receiver who can play the next level, a really good number 3, but his dynasty value is now just plateaued. He's a very bottom of the roster guy, gonna be on the waiver wire in some leagues. And yeah, when he gets some opportunity, he's gonna be the guy that come in there and put up a 25-point game for you. But you just never know when that's gonna come. Right. But I do like the player. I just think his dynasty value is literally falling out, and I don't see it coming back up. The tide is gone.
How are we feeling about these running backs? Because Gaskin, even going into week 1, we had no clue that he was going to be the starter last year. We all thought it was going to be Matt Breida. And then all of a sudden, whoop, Myles Gaskin's the guy. And he had a really good season.
Really good season.
We in on him. We out on him.
I'm selling. We saw during the draft that the Dolphins were in on a running back. They wanted a running back, and they just couldn't maneuver the right pieces to get the running back they wanted. And that was made known. So they're in a position. Myles Gaskin is probably not going to be the running back on this team in 2022.
We said that last year, by the way. He's not going to be the starting running back in 2020. I don't think he will either. I don't think he's going to make it to 2022 as the starting running back because I think it was Javonte Williams, right, that they were trying to
they were
get.
wanting to, and Denver jumped him.
Denver jumped over him. And weren't there a couple other guys that they were in on too, and they ended up missing? Or am I
that I'm not sure about, but we know with this draft class, it was like you either get one of the top three or you might as well kind of wait a while.
It's the reason why Denver traded up because they knew Miami was going to take him. That was where the report came out. They wanted the running back.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, he's a replaceable guy, in my opinion, and they're going to end up replacing him. I think he's serviceable for what they need, right now, but he's better served probably as your number 2 guy or your number 3 guy maybe.
It's what he put up last year. He put up those running back 2 numbers. He finished his 16.4 points per game on a PPR basis was 13th best. He only played in 10 games, had 183 touches for 972 yards and 5 touchdowns. His 97.2 yards per game average was 10th best amongst running backs. He did get 19.3 touches per game too, which is 9th best amongst all running backs. So they used him and he produced, and he was a really efficient in the passing game. Where he wasn't really good at all was the goal line. He only got in 3 times, 9 taps. Which kind of makes me somewhat. They drafted Jared Dokes. Jokes is 228 pounds. He's got the body for it. But they also bring in Malcolm Brown, and Malcolm Brown showed some promise there in LA times, where at times where he looked efficient enough. So if they're going to bring him in to be the goal line back, and this team can take a step forward, this could turn into a mix of Malcolm Brown and Myles Gaskin, and there might be some value there for your dynasty team to buy Malcolm Brown or try to acquire Malcolm Brown. Because Myles Gaskin played in 10 games last year. If Myles Gaskin can't hold up, or like most running backs misses a couple games, Malcolm Brown might come in and produce that 13th best points per game basis, but actually get it in the red zone. Because where most running back value can take a big spike in overall fantasy football finishes is obviously the touchdown production. Malcolm Brown can do what Myles Gaskin couldn't do and actually put it into the end zone.
It will be interesting to see what happens because last year the offense was really predicated on speed. They built everything around speed, but they do have new offensive coordinators actually doing co-offensive coordinators with Eric Studsville and George Godsey, which I don't know who he is. I believe he was on the team already. So there could be a slight shift in philosophy, and that's where a guy like Malcolm Brown could benefit from that because otherwise it might still be, someone like Ahmed that comes in and
right, it was Chan Gailey last year.
Chan Gailey, yep, and then he ended up just doing the one and done and retiring again. So we'll see what happens if the offense is still predicated on the run game so much on speed, or if they try to incorporate a little bit more of the power running techniques. I don't know what's going to happen. We don't have any record on these guys yet, so we're kind of flying blind as far as that goes.
And Dokes he's not without talent either. So I mean he was a 6th or 7th round draft pick.
7th round pick, yeah.
And we've seen guys come out of nowhere before. Maybe this is the guy that comes out of nowhere this year. And if he gets a little opportunity, maybe Gaskins goes down early or something like that. I mean, he's 228 pounds, and so he is the more prototypical, I think, size for a running back.
I liked his tape, too. He was one of those guys that I kind of forgot had come out, and then when he got drafted, I was like, shoot, I never broke him down all the way.
Right.
I forgot he was coming out.
I went back and kind of scrambled and watched some. Yeah. I did like he has some shiftiness for a big man. So I guess we'll see. If
you talked about him late when he did come out, you're like, the Cincinnati running back Jared Dokes, a big running back who does have a little, his feet got good feet.
Yeah, he does
for a guy of his size. Interesting to watch again. I'm selling Myles Gaskin.
Me too.
For anything, unless
if you're a contender and he's your 3rd running back,
it's a great opportunity. Again, sometimes where disaster presents always great opportunity. Where injuries, as sad as they are and heartbreaking for that player, we got to look at from a dynasty perspective. I think. Was it J.J.
Zacharyson?
Zacharyson said that today. Like somebody called him cold-blooded. He's like, dude, I'm a fancy football analyst. That's
what
I'm looking for. It's my job. I never want anybody to get hurt. But when that happens, We're playing Dynasty. This isn't even a redraft. We have to find opportunities and windows. Dynasty is a game of windows, when these opportunities open and when they close, to buy players or, on the other hand, sell players. Right now, it might be a good opportunity to sell Myles Gaskin. You approach this player, you use these stats, you show where he finished last year, where he averaged per game. Maybe you can get a 2023 first for Myles Gaskin. Maybe you can get a player. Maybe there's a young player, a rookie this year that was drafted, that you want for Myles Gaskin. Again, not every league, but it can work out that way for a team that thought they were a contender. Other players on the Dolphins, who do you guys like? Obviously, Mike Gesicki is a good name here amongst tight ends who had a top 6 finish. Where do you view Mike Gesicki amongst dynasty value when it comes to tight ends? So obviously, we have tier 1, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts. That's probably a pretty clear tight end 1 right now amongst dynasty analysts and players. Tier 2, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson,
Dallas Goedert.
Where does Mike Gesicki fall in that room? Because to me, he's at the door of that window.
That's where he is. He's right below. He's in the 3rd tier. I think with this could be the year where he goes up into that tier. He definitely has the potential. He has the upside to get there with his athleticism, and it's just a matter.
26 years old.
It's just a matter of putting it all together and getting it. I think finally a cohesive kind of vision. I think it's nice that they finally have a quarterback that they're kind of committing to long term, and unfortunately for him, it's in the last year of his deal. So I mean, now it's like
those are easiest deals to get done now.
Tight ends, I feel like they are pretty easy.
I mean, you're giving a tight end $10 million a year, and they're happy. Like, it's the easiest deal to get done in my eyes.
The difficult part for him is going to be the fact that they did add a lot more talent at the wide receiver position, so there's going to be a lot of targets going there. And then they did add a Hunter Long, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of Hunter Long, we did see, like, Cleveland's a great example where you have a good tight end, but when there's that second tight end there too, that does eat into a little bit of the target share. So I think we could have potentially seen his ceiling at tight end 6.
I disagree. I think the fact that Tua strives so much in 12 personnel that they're going to have to go back there because they're going to have to work with him. They're going to get back in there. So they're going to have to go. I think if they were smart, I think they would go back to that and use that more, which is going to benefit a guy.
But that's not how they just built the team. They just built it investing a bunch of wide receivers.
I understand as well what they want to do here. For me, if I had to, out of that group we just talked about, I don't think there's another tight end out there right now that I would want over Mike Gesicki in a startup draft.
I mean, you're talking Hunter Henrys, you're talking, Hunter Henry and
Jonnu Smith.
We're
going to talk about them next.
I think that the tough part is, like, I just don't know how his ceiling gets any higher than what it is now.
I don't need it to be higher, but there's no reason he can't be Robert Tonyan finished at tight end 4, right? Like,
sure, but he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers.
And I understand that. But
how it gets higher is, Will Fuller's used as a guy that just goes long, and they don't throw to him all that much. He's on the field, but he's not doing much. And then Devontae Parker, who knows? Maybe he does fade back a little. Devontae Parker had the one good year. I mean, it's not like he's been amazing or anything like that. They can get out from underneath his contract at the after this season and save money against the cap. So, that's kind of the road for him to get relevant, I think, is to become one of these top 2 guys in the offense. And it's him, and then it's Jalen Waddle, and then it's everyone else. And that's the route.
I just don't see a world where he passes TJ Hawkinson. I don't see a world where he passes Mark Andrews. I don't see a world where he passes.
But he doesn't have to, because as it goes on, Travis Kelce falls off. He's 31. Darren Waller's 28. I mean, like, he doesn't have to. And to have a tight end that's going to put up his numbers right around that 5, 6 overall, that holds a lot of value. And he could have a very similar path to like someone like a Zach Ertz. But, I mean, the fact that he's already doing this at 24, 25, already finished at this range with his athleticism. I mean, you got to look back. If you watched last year, Mike Gesicki was making some spectacular,
for sure, he's a great athlete,
one-handed catches. I think he falls in a category, so I'm kind of go back to him of, like, I think he could join, like, this next category where if he outproduced some of those guys you mentioned, if he outproduced Mark Andrews, it wouldn't shock me, but his value is just so much lower. And I'm not saying it's on a year in, year out basis, But when you have a tight end, what he can do, not only is he going to give you consistency, which is tight end 6, tight end 7, which is all you can ask for, because once you get past 6 and 7, the difference between tight end 7 and tight end 15, we're talking about a point per game sometimes for some of these guys. But if Mike Gesicki gives some of that value of year in, year out, he's at least top 6. And sometimes he finishes because of injury. So, whether injury or whatnot, or his touchdowns get a bump, he finishes tight end 3 or 4 a year here and there. I think there's tremendous value there. And right now, if he does take another year here where he finishes in that category, I like if Robert Tonyan does the same thing, that price goes ways up. Robert Tonyan's 28, Mike Gesicki's 25. To get that young of a player with that athleticism and those hand skills, who was a great prospect coming out of Penn State, to me, falls back to my saying of always, what seems like an overpay today will be an underpay tomorrow. And I don't even think what you're giving up for Mike Gesicki is even an overpay, because I feel like most people that have Mike Gesicki on their roster is their tight end too, because they had to go into this past season not knowing what they got. The league I mentioned where I gave up a first-round pick for Dallas Goedert, my tight end 1 going into the season was Mike Gesicki. I was a championship caliber team. I wasn't willing to risk that going into the season. Now I sit here with Dallas Goedert and Mike Gesicki. So the best thing that can happen to my team here, because I also have Robert Tonyan on that team, is Mike Gesicki does take that step forward. Now I have Dallas Goedert and Gesicki, and I can now move one of those guys. But the difference for me, though, is I would value him higher than most. So
gotcha.
I think for most people, like you how you feel, you could buy Mike Gesicki from you.
Yeah, you probably could. The 2 players that I think would be interesting as to who you would want more, Noah Fant.
Okay.
Would you want him over Gesicki or no?
I think Gesicki
Cole Kmet's the other one, so those are the 2.
Okay.
I'd take him over Cole Kmet.
He's way more athletic than Cole Kmet.
Yeah.
So I'll take him over Cole Kmet.
Take him over Cole.
And the reason I would say they're equal, Noah Fant. The one thing that worries about Noah Fant is Noah Fant's hands are worse. Mm-hmm. He has a much higher drop rate. And Noah Fant's got Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and Javonte Williams. You know what I mean? Like he's got way more talented players around him. Mm-hmm. So where I think, like Matt said, they can get out from Devontae Parker, which what they're making him. I easily see a situation here where Mike Gesicki becomes that George Kittle kind of targeted player. You know what I mean? Like I see
and if
the
you think
path
that,
there.
then that makes sense as to why you.
Noah Fant's talented. He's the higher draft pick, but Mike Gesicki was a second-round draft pick. Like he was a highly drafted player. There's a lot of things that go to Mike Gesicki's background that are just being shoved aside. But all we do in this community as fantasy players talk about is how long it takes for tight ends to develop. He did exactly what he was supposed to. In the 3rd year, which is a year we always talk about, he took a massive step forward.
And to piggyback on the Devontae Parker stuff, he's the third highest cap hit of anyone, and right now they only have $5 million worth of space underneath the cap, and they're 26, and they're not operating with a bunch of dead money or anything like that. So they don't have a ton of room to, I think, grow and kind of expand this roster. And
they have lots of draft capital too, which is more reason to get rid of some of these veterans too, because they have a lot of draft picks coming in.
So in order to free up space, obviously the cap is going to go up. We don't know exactly how much. So that'll give some relief. But if they get in a bind in any fashion and want to sign somebody in free agency or anything like that, they might have to make a tough decision and get rid of Devontae Parker.
So just for the record, he finished last year as tight end 7, and the difference between him at tight end 7 and Jonnu Smith at tight end 16 was a 19-point total for the season.
19-point total. Yeah.
So
that makes sense. I mean that's how the tight end market is, but maybe this is the year that he separates
and I think that's
himself.
the difference. I'm not sure that he's going to break into that, and if you guys think he will, then
I think he has the athleticism too. How about that?
But not does he have the athleticism. He can run. He runs pretty decent routes, and he's got really good hands. So like everything I saw like Gesicki last year, like I enjoyed. And like you mentioned before, he got banged up last year.
He
too.
did. Yeah, he missed a game or two.
He didn't have a lot of people around him at the end of the year. He was really banged up. So I'm saying I would recommend to our audience go out and buy Mike Gesicki. And I think the price tag is absolutely where it needs to be. that you'll be very happy that you did 3 years from now for what you paid. It would seem like you gave up nothing. And what it seems like an overpay today is underpay tomorrow, that falls right in that category. So before going to our next team, the New England Patriots, Garrett, tell us about our friends over at Prediction Strike.
Oh, yeah. Prediction Strike. You get to buy and sell shares of players just like it's the stock market. We're getting closer to the NFL season, and you can even go right up until game time. You can't do it during the game, but you can go right up to game time and get shares of these players. So if you're DFS players and you're like, man, so-and-so's hurt, this guy's hurt, you know, they're going to target him a lot this week. I'm going to get this player, and I'm going to just get the bump in value for the game. And then I'm going to sell them right after the game's over, instant money. Those are the types of things that you can do over at predictionstrike.com, or even better yet, download their app on the App Store. And if you sign up with the promo code Dynasty, you receive $10 free with your first deposit of $20 or more. That's a promo code Dynasty to receive $10 free with your first deposit of $20 or more over at Prediction Strike.
And just like I mentioned earlier with Dynasty Depot, how we're really going to start seeing uptick in new startup drafts going on right now. Here's a really good opportunity to join a new way of playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, and that's auction fantasy football. And nobody does it better than realitysportsonline.com, the #1 auction website in the world. And you might ask yourself, what is auction fantasy football? It's when you start entering contract years and you start entering salaries for players, and you bid on these players. And how much is that player worth? Well, that depends on what the rest of your league thinks, because you bid on these players, and every time you bid, the price goes up. How many years you're going to have them for? How much are you going to pay them? You know, our friend John Bosch loves auction leagues. It's the only way he'll play, essentially. He's a great person to follow on Twitter to find out, you know, more into Dynasty leagues as well. And Reality Sports Online is going to give you that opportunity to be an NFL owner. It's going to give you that realistic opportunity to actually own an NFL franchise, because they have free agency, multi-year contracts, rookie drafts, trades, franchise tags, first-round options, salary cap functionality, and so much more. And I know it sounds complicated, but it's not once you get into realitysportsonline.com. And right now, you can test out your general manager skills for free in their mock free agency auction, which I highly recommend to everybody. Give it a try, see if you like it. And I promise you, this is a new way to play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And just, we all like to expand it, right?
Awesome.
That's why Superflex grew so much.
Yep.
It's a new way to play it.
New little wrinkle.
They have a really good opportunity for our listeners right now by using a promo code NERDS. You get 10% off of your team or your entire league today. That's right, 10% off with the promo code NERDS. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. So now let's get into one of the most ugly situations we've ever seen. Like, this is so bad. Like, if this was a blind date, I would just turn around. Like, it's that bad. And I know it might sound shallow, but hey, I'm me. You're you. Call me names. I don't care. This is hideous.
It's not. It's
I know
not.
I know it's not all about looks.
It's not always all
some
about
people.
looks.
Like, I'm very shallow.
It's not always all about.
When you're
looks.
as ugly as I am, you got to do something.
And what is that thing that you do?
I ain't drafted any of these guys.
Nope. They're bad, man.
So
really bad.
Let's go through the depth chart, right? Quarterback, Cam Newton, Mac Jones, their first round pick, Brian Hoyer, and they still got Jared Stidham there. All this is irrelevant because they just drafted Mac Jones with their first round pick. Cam Newton's going to be the starter to start the season. Yep. At some point, if he can't hold down the fort, Mac Jones is going to come into
and he's had shoulder issues. You know, if he can't, if for whatever reason something like that crops up again, it's going to be Mac.
Yeah. Running backs, Damian Harris, James White they brought back, Sony Michel, and they also drafted in the fourth round Ramondre Stevenson. Wide receiver, Nelson Aguilar, who they just signed for 2 years for $22 million, which was kind of a shock to a lot of people. Jacoby Myers, a hot name in the Dynasty community right now. Yeah, but Kendrick Bourne, a very good possession receiver, and N'Keal Harry, who wants to leave, but he can't because he can't get open. And then at tight end, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Dalton Keene, Devin Asiasi. Let's start there. This team came out and spent more money than anybody else. I know John Glosser wrote a really good. We have all these teams too. If you're looking for a different perspective on these team breakdowns, go to dynastynerds.com. All our writers have done team breakdowns, IDP breakdowns, and regular breakdowns. And John Glosser at Glosser13 broke down the Patriots. And he mentioned They led NFL in free agency spending with $291,531,000 according to SpotRack. And that's a ton of money. And it went all over the place. Like I mentioned, Nelson Aguilar got $22 million for 2 years. And of course, they go out, they signed Jonnu Smith at tight end. And we're all like, finally, Bill Belichick's got his tight end. Dynasty value through the roof.
Woo, and then a day later or 2 days later.
The very next day.
It was the very next day.
They signed one of the top-rated Dynasty receivers, tight ends out there in Hunter Henry.
Yep.
Flabbergasted. Flabbergasted. And this is after they traded up twice to draft 2 tight ends in Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi. And Asiasi is in Spanish. Doesn't mean so-so.
It means so-so.
Sorry, Devin.
Asiasi.
Asiasi.
It means so-so.
A little so-so.
That might even be generous.
Yeah, look, I'm ugly and bilingual. Look at me.
Look at
me.
you, Rich.
So they signed both these guys. And the way I look at it is there's no way Hunter Henry signs there if Bill didn't present him like, hey, I know we signed
This
Johnny.
is how we're going to use you.
Yeah.
You're going to get this amount of,
So, they signed Nelson
Remember
Aguilar.
Gronk and Hernandez.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is why people talk about Jacoby Myers. If somebody offered me right now, I'm like, hey, dude, I've got this delicious sandwich right here, and you can have it for Jacoby Myers. Before they can even finish their sentence, I would already have a bite out of that sandwich. It's my sandwich. You know what I mean?
mine. You can have
it's
Jacoby.
mine. Kendrick Bourne, a very nice possession receiver, Matt. I know you're a big Kendrick Bourne fan.
Give me a break. I don't like this guy.
Guy loves him.
Loves Kendrick Bourne.
Every time Kendrick walks by, he's like, "Can you need a back massage?" Loves Kendrick Bourne.
Mentioned him one time on the podcast as a guy on the roster for San Francisco, and all
All
of a
it
sudden,
takes.
I like him.
Biggest fan.
Not just a roster. He's like, I kind of like Daniel for some upside.
No,
It was like 3 years ago.
yeah,
but
I don't think I did.
Hey, I got a brain. I
Uh-huh,
can remember
you do
some
have a
stuff.
brain.
Not just a hat rack, my friend.
I can remember some stuff here. So that's what, like,
I
Nelson
think we were
Aguilar-
talking about Dante Pettis, but then we were talking about other guys on the roster that had
Funny
more
thing is-
upside.
Oh, that's everybody.
And I was like, yeah,
No,
who was
the white receiver on the team that you actually liked?
Oh man,
Kendrick Bourne.
no, he was not.
No, there was another guy that he actually did like.
Boone or something. No, I can't
Wasn't
remember his
Dante
name.
Pettis.
I can't remember his name.
I'm gonna find it.
Find it.
Deep study right now. You guys keep talking.
So obviously this offense is going to go through Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry.
Trent.
Dilfer.
Go ahead.
Oh, you're on the right track though. I feel it.
Where do we value Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry? Because to me, this hurts
It hurts both.
both.
Yeah.
Even though Hernandez and Gronk both had success.
That was with Tom Brady.
Yeah, they had Tom Brady.
Look at Cam Newton. Mac Jones is the most highly efficient
Mac
completion
Jones.
percentage quarterbacks out there. The guy gets it done in short and intermediate. Like, it's a really good fit. Mac Jones fits what they, like, on paper what they want to do.
He does. No, I think he's a better
Trent Taylor.
Trent Taylor. I had Trent.
That was the guy you actually did like.
Yes.
He just likes TTs.
T's.
TT.
Yeah.
Trent
Okay.
Taylor. Go on.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. I think I would be more excited if Mac Jones was for sure the starter right now. Because then I would feel better that they were going to be using them as safety blankets on the short to intermediate stuff, and it would be them and James White for this current year as like the main focal points of the offense, and they'd figure out somebody else to throw. The Jacoby Myers would get 60 odd targets or something like that as well.
Do you know how many passing touchdowns Cam Newton had last year?
Probably not a lot.
Garrett?
I'm cheating. I'm looking at it. So go ahead.
Yeah. You can count that number really high, 12.
I was going to say 8, but go ahead.
Lowest in the NFL.
Yeah.
Now, do you believe we just saw the video come out, Cam Newton saying he's healthy for the first time since like 2017.
Everybody's in the best shape of their life right now.
I'm just asking if you believe it at all.
Ask Dak how Zeke's feeling. Best shape of his life. Cam, how you feeling? After you just drafted his first round running back. Best shape of my life.
It is one of those off-season type of
For sure.
fluff piece type of thing. And it was a couple of years ago that they had to pull him at the end of games to throw the ball like 60 yards in like a Hail Mary situation. So there's something not right about the guy's shoulder.
By the way,
unless he got some sort of surgery that he didn't tell us about, that stuff doesn't just like go away.
By the way, the 12 touchdowns was the team total. Cam only had 8.
Yeah, Cam.
See, I said 8, didn't I?
They had the least amount of touchdowns in the entire NFL last year.
2 of them, Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, they only had 4 to the wide receivers, right?
I think that might
They
be
only had
right.
4 wide receivers. Not only that, guess how many targets the tight ends had? Do you know? Are you cheating on that one?
I'm not cheating on that one, so I'll just guess.
12.
28.
33 targets to the
We
tight
both
ends.
undershot it.
They caught
them together.
They only caught 18 of them for 254 yards and 1 touchdown. This offense sucked, monster, whatever you want to call it. Like they suck lollipops. They sucked on lollipops, and it was terrible. So this team officially was terrible. The one thing Cam Newton did do pretty well, though, actually, was his passes over 15 yards. He completed 53% of his passes over 15 yards, which is like
That's a pretty
upper
good clip.
tier.
Yep.
Yeah, it's upper tier for him, which is where Nelson Aguilar comes in.
Sure.
Nelson Aguilar is going to help stretch the field, but predominantly what we're going to see here is they're going to dominate the middle of the field. They're going to dominate with the tight ends. It's going to be Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. I believe it's going to flip the script this year, and they're going to see lead the team in targets and receiving yards, both tight ends.
But it
does
still won't matter, though, will it?
Does it equate to tight end 7 and 8 for both of them?
No.
8 and 9?
Who cares? They're going to be in that bunch.
They will. They're going to both be somewhere between tight end 7 and tight end 16, like we just talked about last year. And that difference is 19 points on the entire season.
It's going to be, you're going to have to pick and choose. It's a Bill Belichick offense. So whichever one of those guys on any given week presents a better matchup, that's the one that's going to get the most of the targets.
5 catches, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then the next week, 2 targets, 1 catch, 15 yards.
It's going to be maddening. You're going to pull your hair out. It's going to be terrible if you have either one of those guys. Trying to figure out which one to play.
Now, where they struggled, where they wouldn't pass the football, they actually strived in rushing the ball as a team. They were 4th in the NFL last year with 2,346 rushing yards. Like I said, 4th most in the NFL there. Cam Newton actually tied for the lead in carries with 137 and 12 rushing touchdowns. That's where it came for him. They have Damian Harris there. Damian Harris was mostly just in on first downs. I expected him this role to expand a little bit too, but I'm really interested about Ramondre Stevenson. When I was scouting him and watching his tape, he came into when I was going over a scouting report for myself, I was like, this guy's like a hashtag 2-year window. Like I could see him coming in and be exactly what Damian Harris did, was just ground the ball on first and second down, because Harris was not viable in the passing game. He only had 5 receptions, but like most of this team, nobody had receptions. All his carries came on first down. James White comes in, and James White is very efficient in the passing game, actually. But it's going to be Damian, like Sony Michel.
Sony Michel will be lucky to stay on the roster. They can cut him and save money. It's not a lot, like $800,000 against the cap, but if they could save anything at this point, I don't see why they wouldn't just get rid of this guy. They've got better players on the roster right now for cheaper. What's the point of keeping him around?
All reports right now too are that Damian Harris has he's looked the part. He's the guy, which tells me one thing. After he has a good game week 1, I'm absolutely looking to flip him. Even though I think he is a fine player, we have yet to see, in however long Bill Belichick has been there, a consistent running back week in and week out. We just haven't seen it, and I don't think Harris is special enough to break that mold. So it could be him. It could be a James White week. It could be a Stevenson week. It could be Brandon Bolden could come out of retirement for all I know. Like,
Brandon Bolden's on the team.
Is he still on the team?
Yeah, he opted out last year, so his
he's
contract
back.
told this year, buddy.
Well,
he didn't retire. He's back.
Well, then perfect.
The only high-end running back we saw of New England recently is LeGarrette Blount, and that's because he scored double-digit touchdowns. I mean, even they drafted Lawrence
he had,
Maroney.
17 or 18? It was a ridiculous amount.
Put him like running back 1 category. Just on touchdowns is where he was there. I mean, the last big hope was they had Sony Michel, who we loved coming out of college, and obviously his knee, his injury derailed him. It was a fantastic college running back. That's why he was drafted in the first round, because he was a fantastic college running back. Then before that, they drafted Lawrence Maroney high. Didn't pan out. Besides these guys, their number one success outside of that LeGarrette Blount year was James White. And John Glosser wrote on here too. This was a guy, White has been targeted at least 54 times in 6 straight seasons. So in a PPR league, James White might be the best value. For me, obviously, you said Damian Harris has a clear path to number 1. I'm selling after week 1 100%. And I think the gamble here for upside, Damian Harris, he's going to cost you a little bit more. But I think the cheapest gamble here is Ramondre Stevenson.
Right, because I think Ramondre Stevenson actually catches the ball a little bit better than Damian Harrison does. So if he could latch onto that role, I mean, this is the last year of James White's contract. I know we had mentioned Oh God, I wanted to say J.J. Abrams. J.J. The
Taylor?
other Taylor. Thank you.
Oh,
very
yeah,
much.
yeah.
J.J. Taylor as a guy that could succeed James White.
yeah.
But maybe it is Ramondre Stevenson in this kind of hybrid role where he's a bigger back that comes in and does like goal line stuff, but could also swing out and catch passes out of the backfield.
4th round they took him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's the most natural catcher of the football, but I mean they could definitely use him in that way if they wanted to. But I mean at that point you're basically talking about a borderline 3-down back. If you're going to give him the goal line and the pass catching, which are the two most valuable pieces in fantasy football, I mean he becomes an amazing value if that actually does transpire.
And I think for the price, the best bang for your buck is Stevenson.
Hope for the upside.
They have Sonny Michel. Obviously, he's washed. They have Damian Harris, who they like. They re-signed James White, but they still draft a running back in the 4th round. And I know the 4th round is not a great place to be for a fantasy football running back, but it's still the 4th round. You know what I mean? So to me, I think there's opportunity there for Belichick to get Stevenson in because we do notice him a lot. All it takes is a couple wrong things you do, and he's pulling you in and he's giving somebody else an opportunity. If you're not getting it done, he will go through his running backs. So, to me, my favorite guy to have on this roster, obviously Damian Harris is a clear choice.
Sure.
But if I'm looking for any
price.
kind of like opportunity for like cheap, not long-term, but hashtag 2-year window, I'm going Ramondre Stevenson.
All right, that's enough on the Patriots. Let's go to the Jets.
It was ugly. Let's go to the Jets. Depth chart. QB, Zach Wilson, James Morgan, Mike White. Running back, Michael Carter, LaMichael Pirine, Ty Johnson, Tevin Coleman. Wide receiver, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Keelan Cole, Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder. At tight end, Chris Herndon, Ryan Griffin, Tyler Croft. Ugly at tight end. Chris Herndon's shown some upside, but he's just never really get it done. Let's start at the top. Zach Wilson. No, clear cut, going to be the starter week 1.
Absolutely.
There's nobody else there on that depth chart.
Yep.
2nd overall pick, ahead of guys like Justin Fields, ahead of Mac Jones, ahead of Trey Lance. This is a quarterback that going into it, you guys didn't have him high as I have. I had him, as far as I know in the Dynasty community, I had Zach Wilson higher than anybody else. I didn't see anybody else that had Zach Wilson as your number 2 quarterback.
Yeah, it's been mostly either Lance or Fields.
I might have saw a couple people here and there, but you had Zach Wilson as your number 2 quarterback?
Do I not exist on this podcast? Am I not?
Did you have him at 2?
Yeah.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you had Justin Fields as your number 2.
Oh.
I definitely did.
Yeah,
I had
he
Justin
did.
Fields.
Oh, and I like Justin Fields a lot. Well, you, I, and a couple others. I think I saw a couple of them. Like,
Do I not exist?
I didn't know he had number 2. I didn't either. I
It's
mean,
all
we
right.
just
You talk so much, you just don't even listen. You don't pay any attention to me.
I really like Zach Wilson. I think he's a very talented quarterback. I think he's a little bit athletic. I love the way he gets the ball out. I love the way he can get out at any different angle. I said it reminded me of a little bit more athletic Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, definitely.
Who obviously,
The accuracy, the
Loves
ability
it,
Do
to
we like him?
throw at the different arm angles, everything.
Back rub, back
Yep.
rub?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Great stuff.
And he's accurate.
And he's accurate. And you got to love the offense that he's going into as well. I mean, this was
Yep.
one of these, obviously, they brought all the offense over from Shanahan style offense from San Francisco when Robert Saleh came over, Mike LaFleur's the offensive coordinator. And I think he's going to do great stuff. I think it's going to be a quick, short type of passing game, which is going to suit his skill set, I think, to perfection. I think he can get the ball out. I mean, he's got a lightning fast release, and he's deadly accurate. And obviously the Elijah Moore pick was one of my favorite picks in the whole entire draft. I love that guy. So he's going to be a huge help, I think, right out the gate for a young quarterback. And we're probably going to talk about the tight ends here in a little bit. I think they're leaving a little bit to be desired.
Sure. A lot of it to be desired. I mean, talk about another situation where Zach Ertz could potentially get traded. We didn't even talk about. I mean, the Jets, if they want to make this offense to another level, that's another team you could probably go to just because.
You kind of gloss over it. Chris Herndon is probably the highest upside guy, but he's reportedly struggling with the offense and having a hard time picking it up.
We've talked about him for 2 years, a couple of years now. I'm done.
Griffin was actually 2 seasons ago. He actually put together a nice season and ended up getting a contract
yeah.
because of that. With a new quarterback, if Herndon doesn't produce, like he could end up being a sneaky value guy that like every year we have those guys like, how did he end up as a tight end one? Like, he could easily end up being one of those guys just because of who he's
good hands, really, really tall. Yeah. Griffin, he interested me like right when he signed that contract. I picked him up like he was in a waiver in every league. I picked him up and I've been monitoring him. He hasn't done anything since that contract.
No, and he probably still won't. It's a new regime, it's a new everything. But
over Chris Herndon, I'll take him.
It's about the same at this
Tyler
point.
Kroft, he's terrible.
Yeah, but overall,
Is it Tyler Kroft, the golfer's Palmer's grandson?
No.
Who was that?
He played for the Bills. I can't remember his name right now.
Zach Ertz. Go on.
No.
But overall,
He had a heart issue and had to, I think, retire.
I love how this team is being built. They have the two big offensive linemen and Becton and Morgan Moss. What is it? Whatever it is.
It's getting late here in the studio.
It is. It's midnight here. So, but a lot of young, talented receivers. And then you have this very intelligent head coach in Robert Saleh, LaFleur with the bloodlines at offensive coordinator. Like, it's a really good unit they're building. So quickly going back to Zach Wilson, even though I wasn't as high on him as I was Lance and Justin Fields is my number 2 quarterback, you couldn't have asked for much more on a rebuild than what he's getting.
Yeah, and I like what I've already liked what they put around him. Obviously, the running back situation we'll talk here in a minute, but let's go to the receivers. You mentioned Elijah Moore, one of our favorite prospects coming out here.
So good.
And then to hear the news that he is dominating at OTAs already and that nobody can cover him on defense. We talked about earlier about how I love to make a move where, if he was a high second-round pick, but I give him a first-round pick, or I give him a first-round grade, I love to go trade for those guys right away. I did it with Elijah Moore. Every league I didn't get Elijah Moore in, that he went the second round, I offered my first and second round pick the following year. It actually went through for one league, so I was ecstatic about it. I think Elijah Moore is the number 1 receiver on this roster. I know Corey Davis made some good change here, and I like Corey Davis. He was a fantastic prospect coming out too. Finally stepped up last year.
Right.
But I think when it comes to fantasy football production and upside, Elijah Moore is literally sky the limit, with the sky being, I don't want to say Antonio Brown, because Antonio Brown's one of literally the greatest fantasy football wide receivers to ever walk the planet, but in that kind of way. You know what I mean? Like, not Antonio Brown production, because we might never see that again, but he could be that kind of player, a year in, year out, wide receiver 1.
I totally agree. That's how I read it as well. I think Corey Davis is a nice piece. I think Jamison Crowder being there for now is good. Keelan Cole is a nice complimentary guy as well. So they have got pieces.
Denzel Mims, who we loved.
Yeah, absolutely. Denzel Mims kind of, I think, can marinate here for a little bit and kind of.
Never again am I drafting a Baylor receiver, by the way.
Yeah,
never again.
Never.
Don't scout the helmet. Scout the player.
Dude, I go off of history and statistics.
Okay, then should you never draft Justin Fields?
I like Denzel Mims a lot.
Ohio State's never had a quarterback produce.
Gone.
Anyway.
Well, I guess we'll see if he does. I mean, if Justin Fields doesn't produce, then yeah, you shouldn't. You should have stuck with the helmet theory.
Does Denzel Mims have any chance to be why he's in New York right now? Any chance to be a valuable asset? I know we talked about this before. A valuable asset to your dynasty team.
Does he have a chance? Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
You're saying he has a 0% chance of doing anything this year?
If it's not, unless it's injury.
Well, then that's a chance. So
that's saying there's a chance.
I remember I said I'm not selling him. I still like to. I have so many Denzel.
You sound like a hater.
It's gross. I'm just sad.
He sounds sad. He sounds bitter.
He does. He's
super
a bitter men's fan.
I'm a bitter rich.
All right. Well, we've gotten through the tight ends. All right, we've gotten through the wide receivers.
Have we gotten through the wide receivers?
I feel like we've.
What would you pay for Elijah Moore right now? I give him a first and second.
I still have a league where I'm drafting, and it's a 1 QB league, and I have 102, which I'm not taking about 102, but
you should.
But I also have 107.
Oh,
and I'm probably gonna. It's gonna come down between him and
Bateman.
It's gonna be him and no, it's gonna come down to him and Jalen Waddle.
Oh,
and that's gonna be tough. But I think I'm going Elijah Moore.
Nice.
Him, Bateman, and Waddle are in the same tier.
Yep.
So
it's tough.
I like them all.
I wouldn't bat an eye to give a first and a second for him.
Yeah, me neither. Running backs. funny situation here. Now, LaMichael Pirine, 4th round pick.
Woo!
Michael Carter, 4th round pick. Ty Johnson, powerful guy, kind of looked good at times, right?
He did.
Tevin Coleman, the most familiar with the offense, but has been a giant turd ferg since the days when he was competing with Devontae Freeman.
He's working off veteran minimum, easily cuttable salary, just to let you know. So is Ty Johnson.
So what's funny is Michael Pirine and Michael Carter both strive in that outside zone, which is what they're going to run, which is great with these offensive tackles that are big and can move. I mean, Kavai Becton's a monster, and he can move really well. I predict Michael Carter is going to be the starter in this offense, and he's going to offer some PPR upside, and I think he's going to do pretty well in this outside zone. I was in a situation where in our old league, I had a chance to trade up into the second round by giving him a future first. Everybody thought I was taking Trey Sermon. I took Michael Carter.
Was that in our league where you jumped right in front of me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Were you going to take Michael Carter?
Of course I was going to take him.
I took Michael Carter.
I'm assuming you took Trey Sermon then?
Yes, of course I did.
I think and watch Trey Sermon be the guy. That's all I think about all the time now is because I made that move.
Yep.
I was like, Trey Sermon's going to be the guy. I know because they traded up for Trey Sermon, so he's going to be the guy. Raheem Mostert, we'll talk about San Francisco soon.
Yeah, we will.
So Michael Carter, though, like I go back to Michael Carter's tape. Do I think he's a dynamite running back? No, but I think he's a very solid running back. I mean, good enough to keep Javonte Williams at bay. That's your bay.
I mean,
did he keep him at bay? I mean, I think they split time.
Yeah, I mean, did Thurman Thomas keep Barry Sanders at bay?
For a year.
I mean, that being said, I think you could make an argument that outside of potentially Najee Harris, the ceiling in year one could be the highest for Michael Carter, even higher than Etienne or Javonte or Trey Sermon. The PPR upside potential.
He's got a clear route to carries.
And he's got a clear route to carries. Will that likely happen? No, there's a lot of guys here, and it's probably going to be muddy and yucky. But if he does do a good job, earns that job partway into the season, he could have a monster role, and he could be one of those rookies that ends up helping you on a championship run. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not even saying necessarily that it is the most likely scenario, but the ceiling is absolutely there in year one for Michael Carter.
And he's got a clear path those PPR running back points as well. So now he's in a unique role to be the man as the starter, but he's also in a position to catch the football. I mean, LaMichael Pirine's not he's okay at catching the football.
And he was drafted by a different regime.
He was.
Which it was a different coaching staff. That kind of stuff does matter. I know they're both 4th round draft picks. And I'm sure once they get to camp, if LaMichael Pirine is the better running back, he'll get carries. But for now, going into it, there's still got to be a slight edge given to Michael Carter. And from everything that we've heard, Michael Carter has looked explosive and looked pretty good in this offense throughout the early portions of the offseason stuff. So we'll see. I think he probably has a little bit of a leg up on a guy like LaMichael Pirine. Obviously, Tevin Coleman has probably a knowledge leg up on all these guys. Just being familiar with the whole Kyle Shanahan offense and how like Mike LaFleur runs things. But bottom line is they drafted Michael Carter. I think they're going to want to get him on the field at some point.
And as a contender that wanted, I had Joe Mixon and Saquon Barkley as my running backs, and I also have Melvin Gordon. But for a legit contender that as not like a fake, I think I could win the league this year, I wanted that one more running back for security because I came in second place last year, and it's because I didn't have Joe Mixon and Saquon Barkley. They were my starting running backs. I lost them both for the whole year, and I still came in second place because my team's really strong. I want a guy who offered really good upside. With Trey Sermon there and Michael Carter, I knew that was an opportunity to get one of those guys. And with all my Devy guys, and you and Jared tell me this running back class is so weak next year, I had
terrible. It's fine.
But I know my pick was going to be anywhere from 10 to 12.
Sure, and it's not going to be deep enough to
grab another running back.
Right.
And I want an opportunity to get a guy that I can grab here and either one, let me see what I see and either keep him going forward and then I could flip Joe Mixon potentially. Or two, like you guys said, I think this year he's going to do enough where that value will be there where I can get a higher first-round pick than I gave up at the end
Sure.
if I need be. So even though I gave up my first, at the end of the year, if I want to, I can move my first, which would be, I hope to be 112, up to 1-6 if need be.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a pretty good investment, and I would make that trade every day if I was a contender. And honestly, I would do the same for Trey Sermon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I see both those guys pretty similarly. Sermon was obviously, 10 or 15 picks earlier in the draft and got traded up for. But at the bottom line is they're in identical offenses, just different, East Coast, West Coast here. But that it's their parallels are striking, I guess.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Back next week. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be here.
Yeah, I'll be here too.
I think we're going to record on a weekend.
Ooh.
Early. Matt's going to get some sun.
It'll be very nice.
I hope so.
Yep.
All right. See you next week.
Adios.